Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to Sweetwater Sound Check. This time out, a new plug-in from TC Electronic that recreates a vintage delay and that features an external USB hardware controller. Let's get started. Today we're checking out the TC2290 Dynamic Digital Delay, a combination of a plug-in and a USB controller that allow you very deep, very powerful delay effects. The original 2290 was a hardware digital delay. It came out in the 1980s and was very popular in studios and also very popular with guitar players because it had a unique effect called a ducking delay. Now this effect has become so ubiquitous that many other delay processors now feature a 2290 preset, and it recreates that ducking delay effect. By ducking delay, I mean a delay that drops down in level while you're playing, so it isn't obvious while you're playing. It doesn't mess things up, make them muddy, or make them messy. When you stop playing, the delay comes up in volume and fills in the spaces in between. It's a very cool, very useful effect, especially for guitar, but for other instruments and for vocals as well. Now the 2290 hardware and the new 2290 plugin are capable of many more effects besides just ducking delay. It's a great digital delay. It does excellent chorus effects, flanging effects, all kind of panning effects. It does modulation effects like tremolo. There are so many things you can do with this delay. As I mentioned, the TC2290 is a combination of a software plugin, which you see running here inside of Cubase. It's compatible with AAX, VST, VST3, as well as audio units, so it supports most DAWs. An important part of the package, though, is the TC2290 hardware controller, which hooks up to your computer by USB. You can use the plugin without the controller, but many of the features and many of the functions and parameters are only accessible via the hardware controller. The hardware controller is where we access all the different sections of this plugin. We have a digital delay, we have modulation effects, we have panning effects, and we also have dynamics effects that allow us to push the delay level or the direct signal up and down, as well as do things like tremolo. Different sections of the controller access parameters for those various effects. At the top of the controller, we have input and output level meters. At the top right, we have our delay settings, and this is where we set our delay time. There are several different ways you can do this. First of all, you can scroll up and down using the arrow buttons. When you're doing this, you're changing the delay time in milliseconds. While the green LED is flashing, we can also directly enter delay times using the keypad. We can also synchronize the plugin's delay time to the tempo inside our DAW by pushing the sync button. When we do that, the up and down arrows change to subdivisions of the quarter note. Finally, we can tap in the tempo using the learn button. We also have a button in this section for turning on modulation for the delay repeats. This allows us to do chorus repeats and other effects. At the top center, we have the pan dynamics section of the controller. This is where we turn the panning effects and the dynamic processing effects on and off, as well as access a couple of parameters for those. For panning, when we turn that on, we can choose to modulate or pan just the delay repeats or the direct signal or both, and you do that using this switch: delay only, direct only, or both. Dynamics processing in this section allows us to push down the delays using compression, or when we hit the reverse switch, to change to a gated delay effect. Our modulation settings are adjusted here on the upper left. We can adjust the modulation speed using the up-down arrows, or we can directly type in a speed. We can adjust the depth in the same way. We can also select the waveform or how the different effects are triggered using the next button. We can select sine wave, a random waveform, or we can use envelope to trigger the effect. With envelope, we're looking at a threshold of the incoming signal level. When we cross that threshold, the effect will be engaged and you'll start to hear modulation. You adjust those thresholds here inside the plugin. We can also trigger the effects using incoming levels. The final switch selects whether we're adjusting modulation for delay, panning, or dynamics. Feedback settings are here on the lower left. We can set the feedback level using the up-down arrows or the keypad. You can also invert the polarity of the feedback. This is most important with effects like flanging, where that out-of-polarity feedback will give you a more intense effect in certain situations. Our final switch in this section allows us to adjust feedback, a high-pass filter, or a low-pass filter. At the bottom center, we have our presets section. We can move through presets, stepping up and down using the arrow buttons. You can see those changing inside the plugin. We can also type those in directly. We have on-off for delay. And the last switch allows us to access a special parameter. Now those parameters are actually the same parameters that are here inside the plugin, and we can access those using a parameter number as well as a parameter value. Now this defaults for mix. So when I press this, we've called up the mix parameter, and when we adjust that, it changes the mix parameter inside the plugin. Finally, we have the keyboard for entering numeric values. Moving over to the plugin, we have input level, output level, and mix, and all three of those can be locked so they don't change when you change presets. Under the mix level, we can set where the signal is muted when you press the mute button up here. You can mute on input, which would allow the delay trails to continue on when the signal is muted. You can mute on output, which would mute the delay outs as it's feeding but not the direct signal, or you can choose to mute both. When our delay time is synced up to the DAW, we can access different subdivisions here, everything from a 64th note to a whole note. We can also choose whether the synchronization is straight, dotted, or triplet note values. We can invert the delay modulation, add a deep modulation effect. And this section over here is where we set the thresholds. And when the incoming signal crosses that threshold, that's when the effect will be engaged when we're doing dynamic effects. Rounding out the plugin, we have preset selection here on the bottom. We have a variety of factory presets that are included. We have signature presets where different artists have worked with TC Electronic to create specific presets. And you can also create user presets. Now you can also mark various presets as favorites, and you can sort by those presets so that when you step through them using the hardware controller, you're only working through your favorite presets. This is very useful if you have a set of favorites that you're using for a particular project. And you can choose which preset out of all of them that are loaded up that you want to make your default that opens up when the plugin is accessed. A nice feature is you can use this menu selection to reveal the user preset folder. This allows you to save your user presets off to, say, a thumb drive, take it with you to another studio so you always have your user presets with you. If you have multiple instances of the plugins, you can see those down here. Each one can have its own name. The green chain icon indicates that our hardware controller is connected up. And we also have some functions here where we can access the manual, website, check for updates, turn on tooltips if you need help with what's happening with the different parameters. Takeover Focus allows you to have whatever plugin you open up immediately take control of the hardware controller. So if you have multiple instances of the 2290 in your DAW, you can switch quickly from one to the other. With that quick tour out of the way, let's take a listen to some presets and hear some of the effects that this plugin is capable of. As you can hear, the 2290 dynamic digital delay from TC is capable of a ton of different effects. The last one, for example, is a great example of that ducking delay effect, where the delay is pushed down while the guitar is playing. It comes back up in the spaces in between. Really cool and really useful. The original 2290 was an incredibly powerful hardware processor, and now you have all that power and more inside your computer with the TC2290 dynamic digital delay plug-in and USB hardware controller. It's a great package. It's a lot of fun to use, incredibly deep, but also easy to access. I think you're going to love this one. Check it out. Thanks for joining me for Sweetwater Soundcheck. I'm Mitch Gallagher.